Hi everyone, so Sky just rang me before with a question about the 2D and 3D visualization drawings. So I thought I would put together an example of what yours could look like. Now, there's no right or wrong answer here with how many sketches you're meant to draw, or how many 3D sketches there should be, how many 2D sketches there should be. But what I really want to stress to you all is that on your A3 page, it should be really obvious that you are trying to figure out how that toy is going to work, perhaps what materials it's made out of, how big each size or component is. That is the guts of what this page is about. It's not how accurately you do your 2D and 3D drawings, but it's about the fact that you are really showing that you're thinking about how you're going to refine that toy. So this 2D and 3D page, if we just go through it really quickly, we can talk about some of the things that are on it. You can see, let's start with the 2D and 3D. We've got a range of 2D drawings. So there's one here, there's one here, there's one up. What am I doing? There's one here. That's 3D. And then there's one down here. So as I'm thinking through the ideas of how I can refine the shape of the bee toy, I'm redrawing it every time. So every time it's just getting slightly better. Now let's look at the 3D drawings. I've got this little one up here that I've used the crating method for, just so I'm trying to work out, is the head a ball, is it a perfect sphere, or is it going to be more of an oval shape? So I'm working through those considerations in my drawing. Then there's another little 3D one down here where I've actually done an exploded drawing to show that the bits of the toy, the arms and the legs and the antenna, can all be sort of removed from this toy. And then there's one more three-dimensional drawing here where you can see again I've got some crating, and you can see that I've got some sort of grid lines and guidelines in there to help me construct what is essentially more of an organic shape, but constructing it out of simple geometric forms. And that's a really good way to think about your toy. So rather than trying to draw the whole thing and getting overwhelmed, actually break it down into parts. So let's see if I've got something here. This is a very simple example, but look at this cup. So the first thing I would do is rather than trying to draw it all at once, I'd start with the cylindrical cup and attempt that before I actually started drawing the handle. I'd look at the handle in terms of the space that it occupies. So if I were to draw like a ruler around it or a rectangular shape, that would help me to sort of work out the proportions and how to actually fill in the curves within that overall shape. So that's the whole purpose of this type of page that you're doing. And how are we getting for time? Spending a bit too long on this. The one other thing that this page is also meant to communicate is your creative design thinking skill of SCAMPER. So it's not necessary for you to use every single one of those letters in the acronym of SCAMPER, but just use a few of them. So if I were to illustrate the ones that I've used up the top here, A, adapt. I've adapted the form of the body. So I've gone from this kind of squishier, fatter shape into a skinnier, cylindrical shape. So that's an example of using adapt. If I look down here for P, I've put to another use. I've actually changed the antenna. So rather than them just being static and sticking straight out the top of the head of the toy, they're now made of a softer material and they can be bent and shaped. So it allows kids to sort of interact and have that sort of tactile experience. If I look at E, which is eliminate, in this sort of creative development, remember we're in the development phase of the design process, not the refining phase. So in this development phase, I've used E for eliminating, and I've eliminated the mouth just to see what that looks like. Sometimes that can look a bit cuter, maybe, and so I had to go at doing that, seeing what that would look like. If you can see here, I've got S for substitute, and here I've substituted the legs, arms, and antenna for the honey spoon. So I don't know if you know those honey spoons, you know, they're usually made of wood and they've got like a coil on them. So I just thought, oh, you know, the link with bees and honey, wouldn't that be interesting if I made the arms and legs out of those? So that's an example of substitution. For reverse, you can see here R for reverse, I've reversed the function. So if we look at this first drawing I did, that's just a soft plush toy where all the pieces are together. It's one sort of uniform form. There's nothing that can be pulled apart and broken because it is for kids. And I wanted them to sort of feel comforted with a soft toy. But I thought, what if you reverse the function? So what if everything was actually able to be pulled apart and then put back together? And one more example of Scamper is M, so modification. So here I've modified the wing shape. So in some of the drawings I've got smaller wings, and then I've chosen to modify the wing size. I've used scale to do that. So there's an example of Scamper. Again, you don't have to use the exact same acronym that I've used. You don't have to use those letters. You can use some other ones. The other take-home point that's really important is those sketches don't have to be perfect, and you've just got to show a variety of 2D and 3D, and this is how you're going to work out what your toy looks like, so you can move on to the next step from this week, which is to actually draw the toy in orthogonal and in isometric.